Okay, so this video is for Greg, who asked me to do a little bit more detail on a balanced setup for the 407 Fluval. The 307 and the 407 have a double basket, which is two separate chambers that really don't mingle. There isn't a lot of cross overflow between the two baskets. There may be ever so slight, but as far as I can tell, they nest fairly well on top of each other. So they're pretty tight. Like even this makes me think that maybe there'd be a tiny little bump up, which sometimes is enough to get water to flow from basket to basket. But I'm thinking that even this gap actually closes a little bit. So there's not a lot of flow between chamber to chamber. So think of these as two separate columns of water flow that you get to play with. But if you were doing a balance of both biologic and mechanical, then it would kind of make sense to, whereas in one video, I just basically favored one side as like a deep biologic, trying to create an anaerobic situation, and then just had a little bit more of a higher flow biologic section, and that was like my zero maintenance filter. So for this filter, you're actually be doing some, like a balance of biologic and mechanical. So then I would say is, these are great. I got them for a good price, and I'm pretty sure they were expensive media. I actually like this media better than the rings, and because I feel like I get more surface area, but they won't clog up to the point, they're not so fine that they'll clog up. And so putting these, just pour this into the bottom tray, and then you would have a bottom tray of media like that. And really what you would be doing is you would just basically be filling up the first three trays with similar media. And you could play games with whatever media that you're comfortable with, that you found success with, or kind of. I got a good price on this, I believe, on Posh, which is like it's a kind of like a Facebook marketplace, but so randomly I just found some other really good things too for a good price. It came with something else. So if you want to spend the money on something like this, I think this stuff's great. Some of this finer media, and you could do 4 baskets of this stuff, right? You can even do 3 baskets of this stuff, because really what you want to do, so I don't use these filters. Well, actually, here's what the way that I look at these. If you don't mind opening up your filter and doing maintenance, basically when you wring this out and all of that debris comes out, think of that as the food, because what goes in an aquarium must come out in the form of anything, really. And that sort of creates the balance of whatever you're putting in, you're taking out. And that's the whole idea of a balanced aquarium. So when you wring this out into your garden over your plants to kind of give them some nutrition, that's like saying the food I put into the tank I just took out in a different form, but that's okay, because you're still removing the elements of that food in a different form. And so wringing out a sponge full of bacteria and gunk is one way of keeping balance in your aquarium. So if you don't mind opening up your canister, which is not that big of a deal, and wringing these out, then these are actually great final stage. You can have that as your final stage. And you could even put the polishing pad that comes with the filter, which I didn't really care for, because I thought it was too fine of a polishing pad, and it would actually clog up relatively quickly. I'm saying like less than a month for. I mean, this is normally for a big tank, so I'm saying for sure less than a month. Maybe every 2 weeks you'd have to, at the very least, rinse out your polishing pad. These I cut from a different pad, and I think they may not get rinsed out as quick. So for your last stage, having having this basket as your last basket, like that, and all you do is you take out this last basket and service this, and then you never clean this. You just put this in, and you never clean this. This is not a filter. This is a bio sponge that is meant to be colonized with bacteria. There's no reason to clean it because the water just flows around it. It doesn't flow through it. It actually flows around it. And at no point is this going to stop you from filtering, because the water will just bypass. Even if it just got completely full, the water will just bypass it in so many different ways around this sponge. This is meant to be colonized, so you don't need to clean that. Same thing with this. You never clean this. This is meant to be colonized. Cleaning it would destroy the purpose of the reason why you put this in the first place. It's meant to be gunked up. It's meant to be caked in stuff. Not that that will happen, but that's kind of the idea behind that. This is supposed to be living. This is mechanical. This is physically removing waste, which you then wring out, and that brings your aquarium back into balance as far as the solids, the particulates. You know, the bacteria will actually lock up that same nutrition that you put in the form of food. The bacteria will just translate it into another form, but essentially it's the same concept, is that all of that material, wherever the constitutes of that food was, should end up ultimately in here, and then you wring it out. You could put more food in, you wring it out, you could put more food in. So that's the whole idea behind physically removing matter. And it also makes the aquarium look good too. But it's also a pain in the butt. And if your plants can utilize it, and you can use it to build substrate, that's another place that you can utilize that organic matter in a different form, and you can lock it away in the form of a plant. You can lock it away in the form of soil. And if you think about the grand total of food that you add to your aquarium, it's very insignificant. And so if you transferred it into the form of a plant, that could easily be one large plant. It could be months worth of food that went into the aquarium, or all the gunk in your gravel could easily be a year's supply of food that went into your aquarium. So there's other ways of turning waste into things that aren't bad. So yeah, this is, if you don't mind opening up your aquarium pretty frequently, because you're gonna have to monitor your flow, because I think these sponges clog fairly quickly, and I think these clog fairly quickly, but they'd be great filters, right? So for mechanical filtration, that's fine. I didn't want to be in my aquarium every month dealing with these things, and I don't know if it would be every month, but I'm assuming it would be. One thing you could do is you could take chopped up, that same filter, and you chop it up. Yeah. And then you can kind of put one of these on, same story. And maybe this doesn't clog as quickly. So there'll be some particulates that make it through, and you may never notice that, but they'll capture enough particulates that you'll get that benefit of mechanical filtration without having to do monthly maintenance, and maybe you can stretch this out. And the reason why I did this is because this is not enough. You chop up some more. What will happen here is it'll catch some, but once it gets completely clogged for whatever reason, there's so much bypass that it can move on to the next piece, and then the next piece gets it. So you could really kind of pack in some of the waste before you get a total clog, and then eventually hit this thing. And then the other thing too is you can get something looser. It doesn't have to be something that fine. You can get some of this not quite as dense material, cut yourself a section of it and put that on as your final stage, and that might get you months and months of filtration, relatively decent filtration without having to do a lot of maintenance. And what else could you do? So just by customizing your last basket, filter floss. Yeah, filter floss is great, but what you'll do with the filter floss is You might do some sort of combo where you would sort of stick in, you know, 2 pieces of these, kind of fluff in, you know, and just sort of do this staggering thing where you get to utilize the full volume of this basket will get clogged, instead of having like the volume thickness of this gets clogged, and then now you're doing maintenance. What you want to utilize is the whole width of that basket. You know, you want to clog all of these layers sequentially until then it's completely clogged, and that could be months later, as opposed to this singular piece, which would be, you know, maybe weeks to a month, right? And so it's just a way of figuring out how to pack this so that you don't quickly clog the very bottom, and then you're not able to utilize the remainder of the basket before you basically stopped filtering, right? It started trickling. And so, you know, you kind of just get creative and play around and just see if there's ways that you can kind of loosely pack this. And sometimes just loose filter floss is enough with some random pieces like that. And then you can maybe do this topper. That could be one side, right? And then you can kind of do the same thing here. You know, put some of those sponges in. Take this filter floss, sort of loosely put another little bit of loose filter floss in there. And then do another little cap like that. And then the other danger is that this is too close to this, and you get a constriction in this immediate area around that lid, and that gets clogged first, and you don't get to clog all of this before you clog just this. And so one way that you can get around that is you can maybe even take like a piece of plastic, so that you would basically just be crushing this down and just giving plenty of flow around this ring, instead of having this just be so jammed up tight against this that there's no flow. And that's what all this baffling is for, but I just think it's not quite enough to sort of keep that. Because I think what happens is, once the pressure starts building, it just compresses into that baffling, and it stops working. So your job is just to figure out how to keep some free space right below this lid. And you can maybe use a piece of plastic or a piece of stainless steel mesh, you know, like something that you might have laying around. You can cut another chunk of filter, like a thin piece of filter, and just sort of put it there to sort of create that space. And then you would only be servicing this one basket, which makes you don't even need to take the filter to the sink. You could pull this one basket, put it in a bowl, walk this over to the sink, do what you got to do, put it in the bowl, bring it back, and drop it right back in. And that's your maintenance. I should have made this video quicker, but yeah. So 3 baskets of media, and then 1 cleverly packed basket of mechanical, and that's a balance. That's good balance. There's no point in having mechanical below this, because you're going to prematurely clog before you even get to utilize the rest of your basket. And I really do like Fluval's design. I think they maximize the canister volume very well. I think it's very quiet. I think it's affordable. And what else did I think? I had one more thought. It's quiet. It's affordable. Yeah, it's good engineering. In general, oh, and you can pop that valve off so easily. I don't. And then if you're worried about the UV, some come with the UV built in, which is kind of cool too. The only problem is I wouldn't use the UV with a 407, because I think the UV constricts the flow, and you're not going to get full flow out of a 407 if you constrict it with the UV. I just kind of noticed when I put my UV on my bigger filter, the flow rate dropped. It doesn't say anything about that, I think it says that it actually can support it, but I found out that there's a restriction in the flow. So don't put this on higher than a 207 unless you want to lose some flow rate. So, oh, and as far as this stuff, keep this stuff for emergencies. Just put it in a Ziploc bag. If you're ever in doubt and your tank is sick or something's not right, you can pop this stuff in, and that might be the cure. That might really clean up the water to the point where your fish can make it. So that I kind of keep this stuff for emergencies. The other thing is you can use this to get the carbon to get creative with making substrate. By adding carbon to your substrate, you can sort of create a really cool substrate and do some research on that. All right, hope that was helpful. Thanks, Greg.